This is Rock and Roll English. Real people, real English.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Rock and Roll English. Anyone that listens to the show to the end will have understood that I am in London now. So this is a special episode because it is the first time I am doing a face-to-face episode with Dan the Man.
How you doing?
I am fine. Although normally I have the barrier of the computer to separate us. Now I am looking at your horrible face. So,
My burnt face.
Your burnt face, yes. Dan the Man got burnt because we went to the pub today for about an hour. And it was
more than that.
It was probably about 15 degrees and Dan's face now looks like a tomato.
Yeah, I'm feeling quite unwell, actually.
Yeah, sure. But that's Dan the Man for you. He is recording the podcast nonetheless. So thanks very much for this, Dan.
You're welcome.
Thanks. So how do you think I arrived here, Dan?
Where?
In England, where I am now, talking
got a plane,
to
but
you.
You could have been anything. You could have been talking about my flat. A plane. You got a plane.
A plane, exactly. An aeroplane. And that is what we are talking about today. Well, flying. Anyway. So how often do you fly, Dan?
2-3 times a year.
Yeah?
Not that much. You?
Well, unfortunately, I have to fly a lot now because my family live in another country. So I am a very loyal customer of Ryanair. So I travel luxury. So yeah, I travel a lot with that fantastic.
You could fly EasyJet, couldn't you?
There are many reasons, Dan, that I don't fly EasyJet, but money is the main one. Yes. So are you scared of flying, Dan?
No. Are you?
Have you ever been scared of flying? Have you ever been? Present perfect there. We're talking about life experience, Dan.
No. Have you?
Yes, extremely scared. Until I moved to Italy, actually, because then I got used to travelling. Notice there the verb to get used to something. Something was strange for me, but it's not strange anymore, Dan. I got used to it. Notice how I said got used to travelling. But yeah, I was scared, but then I got used to it because, well, now I have to fly so much, so I have no choice. What seat do you prefer? Because normally there are 3 seats. What are the names of the seats, Dan?
Aisle, middle, or window.
Yes, the aisle one is the rock and roll vocab we were looking for. The window and the centre are quite obvious, but the aisle, not the corridor seat, the aisle seat. What's your choice, Dan?
The window, because I don't go to the toilet on a plane, and I don't want to have to get up.
Another reason I was scared of flying was because the toilet scared me. I was sure when I flushed the chain, and remember, flush the chain is when you click it and it goes... And I was sure it was going to suck me out of the plane.
How old were you?
About 25.
Are you serious?
Well...
Are you serious?
Yes and no.
Jesus.
So I was scared of going to the toilet. But no, the window seat is bullshit.
Why?
Because if you have to get up, it's a fucking nightmare.
I don't ever get up.
Not to look at a book, to stretch your legs.
Hang on, what book would I be looking at? They don't have bookshelves on planes.
No, but maybe a book is in your bag.
I always have my bag under the seat.
So this is the next question. What do you do on a flight normally? What do you do, Dan?
Sleep, snore, and dribble.
Snore is something we've had before on the podcast, remember, which we also know Dan does. And dribble is a nice one. That is it's a very disgusting thing when spit is, let's say liquid is coming out of your mouth when you sleep. Generally what 2-year-olds do. In fact, my 2-year-old niece dribbles quite a lot, actually. I listen to podcasts, and so anyone listening to this, next time you're on a flight, what can they do, Dan?
Listen to another podcast.
Listen to our podcast is the correct answer we were looking for. Okay, so have you ever met anyone on a flight and established a relationship?
No, have you? I don't talk to people on flights.
No.
I don't talk to strangers that often.
Yeah. Remember, stranger is someone you don't know. Yeah, I don't really either. But I have seen many stupid newspaper articles about people saying, I was on a plane and this woman was sitting next to me and then we went to the toilet and had fantastic sex.
You see, that would be the dream.
That is the dream.
But I can't imagine you could get much room in a Ryanair flight.
Maybe British Airways have more space in the toilet so their passengers can have sex easier.
It would be so obvious, I think, if you do go to the toilet. I mean, there's no way you could get away with that.
Ooh, get away with that. Nice vocabulary, Dan. Which means to not be punished for something. Yes, I agree. There is no way you could get away with it. I find it very difficult to believe, but, it seems a lot of people are a part of this club. Do you know the name for this club, Dan?
The Mile High Club.
The Mile High Club. Because you are, let's say, a mile in the sky. So it's just a nice sounding name, really, isn't it? Okay, here's another question for you, Dan. Do you ever listen to the safety speech at the beginning?
Absolutely never, no.
I asked myself, who does listen to that? What I personally
I bet you did when you were scared.
No, I didn't actually. If anything, the safety speech made me even more scared. But what I basically think is, if this plane crashes, we are fucked. If you give me this life jacket and to blow up, this really doesn't make much difference to saving my life.
There's in my family, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but when I was about 12, I was going to America with my dad, and my mum found in my suitcase, because I was quite scared at the time, some rosary beads.
So the rosary beads are the things that people use to pray, and you brought them with you
For safety.
What happened to, have you ever been scared of flying?
Well, I just remembered that, yeah.
Well, thank God you had your rosary beads. So I've got a bit of a strange fact for you here, Dan, because, rock and roll English loves strange facts. So, in 1985, a Norwegian airline was hijacked. What does it mean, hijacked, Dan?
When someone illegally takes control of the plane.
Perfect answer, Dan. Very good. So, yeah, the plane was hijacked, and the hijacker, the person, was apparently drunk. So, in order for him to put down his weapon, they offered him more beer, and he said yes.
What beer?
Good question. So yeah, he had a gun probably. I don't know. It doesn't specify the weapon. So I'm going to kill everyone. So, do you want more beer? Okay, yeah.
Take a seat.
Maybe they should do that in the safety speech. If a hijacker comes on, make sure you offer him some beer and everything.
You'll be hijacking planes left, right and centre.
Well, left, right and centre. It's a nice piece of vocabulary there. We often use to speak about something you do all the time. So obviously now I will be hijacking planes all the time, or left, right and centre. Have you ever missed a plane, Dan?
2.
Oh yeah, I forgot that we have spoken about this before. I will not go into that story. And when I say go into that story, it basically means, speak about more or investigate more. If you want to go into that story, go back and listen to the podcast about travelling. But notice as well that we miss flights, not lose flights, which many people say when they speak English. I often tell my students, if you lose a flight, that means you have an aeroplane in your garden and then you cannot find it anymore. It's possible you could lose a flight, but, it's very, very difficult. Did you also know, Dan, that in half of Britain's biggest airports, it is cheaper to park a plane than a car.
What do you mean? What?
So if you want to park a car in a car park, it costs more money than it does to park. Well, it says a small aeroplane.
How much does the small aeroplane cost?
Well, there are no numbers or figures actually, which is another word for numbers.
So that's the useless point.
I think it's a very valid point because when my mother picked me up from Stansted yesterday, she picked me up directly out the front of the airport, and we had to pay £4, and we were there less than 5 minutes. But did you know, Dan, it says here that a study done says that flying is 176 times safer than, what do you think?
Riding a bike?
Walking.
What?
176 times safer than walking, 15 times safer than driving, and 300 times safer than a motorbike. But my point against this is always this. If I have an accident, I don't know, walking, maybe I fall over and I hurt my leg. If I have an accident flying, it's a different ball game.
Exactly.
And a game which I don't like playing so much. Anyway, time flies when you're having fun, Dan. That's a nice expression there, which we use to say, well, exactly that. Time goes quick when you're having fun. Like in this podcast, time has flown. So we have come to the end.
See you later.
See you later. Oh, no, Dan. Wait, because normally I do the intro and outro without you. But as you are here, I thought we could do it together.
Oh, God, all right.
You seem very happy about that.
Well, I don't know what that means.
Because you have never listened to one episode, I know. But in reality, you don't need to do anything. You can just watch and listen to me. Okay? And maybe then you can learn. And maybe one day
I can be trusted.
You can be trusted. And you will finally be able to walk alone. Okay? I will set you free like a bird. Anyway, so let's look at some of that rock and roll vocabulary. We had get away with it when we were talking about having sex in the toilets. And Dan said, I don't know how people get away with that. So remember, to not be punished for doing something. We had hijack when, remember, you illegally take control of a plane. Remember the man with the beer who hijacked the plane, the bastard. We had left, right and centre. You will be hijacking planes left, right and centre. Remember, all of the time. Remember, miss the plane. Everyone, I'm sure, understands that, but please try to remember that. You miss the plane and you miss the bus. You do not lose these things. We had aisle, the aisle seat, which remember is like the corridor seat. And we had time flies when you're having fun, like today. And also time was flying when Dan was in the sun earlier, which is why his face was so red. I asked him, do you want to put some sun cream on? He said, oh no.
It's quite bad, isn't it?
It's very bad.
Yeah.
Very bad. You look ridiculous. Anyway, thanks for your help in this intro and outro today, Dan. It's been so much more help than usual.
Can I do it next time?
You're not trusted yet. Okay, but keep listening, keep practicing. One day you will get there. Anyway, we will see you on Thursday for another rock and roll episode. Have fun and keep on rocking. Before I go, I have just realised why I do the outro without Dan. It's because I can listen to the show before I mention the rock and roll vocabulary, because I have forgotten some. So I'm recording this again now, quietly, because my family are in bed asleep. So we had to get used to something, which, remember, when something is strange and then becomes normal. And get used to plus ing, yes. And we had dribble. When you dribble is when liquid comes out of your mouth. Let's say Often people like Dan do this when they sleep. Generally is for what babies do, but also drunk people dribble. We had strangers when Dan said he doesn't talk to strangers on the plane. And remember, that means someone you do not know. Often your mother says to you when you are a child, do not speak to strangers. And we had rosary beads, which is the like necklace that you use to pray, and you say 10 prayers about Mary, something like that. I can't remember specifically, but Dan had it because he was scared of flying. We had go into something when I said I won't go into that story, so I won't talk about it. I won't, let's say, investigate it. Often if you don't want to talk about a subject, people will say, let's not get into that. We also had flush the toilet, which, remember, is what you do after you finish in the toilet when the water comes and makes that strange noise that we heard earlier. Anyway, remember, like always, if you go to the website, you can look at all this rock and roll vocabulary and grammar. Anyway, this really is the end of the podcast now. Sorry if Dan was even more boring than usual today. He was suffering from the sunburn he received from the 15 degrees sun. But let's hope he is better for Thursday. Remember, as always, reviews, comments, likes are all very much appreciated. Thanks very much. See you soon.
Thanks so much for listening to Rock and Roll English. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit rockandrollenglish.com and facebook.com/rockandrollenglish. We'll catch you next time.